And we are starting off with some breaking news this minute. China is sending diplomats to Ukraine to negotiate peace and try and broker a peace deal with Russia. Now, in the latest, the reports are saying that the Chinese President Xi Jinping has already had a long phone conversation with Volodymyr Zelensky. Now, it is being reported, it's emerging, that the two leaders spoke for almost an hour. And Xi Jinping reportedly told Zelensky that talks were the only way out of the war, adding that there is no winner in nuclear wars. And following which, the Ukrainian president has said that the conversation will help boost the country's ties with China. Now, as we piece together the latest developments, what about Russia? While it wasn't a party to this phone conversation, the Russian leader did have an in-person meeting, remember, with Xi Jinping recently. So what does Moscow have to say now that Xi Jinping has dialed Zelensky? Russia is saying that it has noted China's willingness to mediate, but that Ukraine's Western friends will not allow it to sign off on any peace deal. This is what Russia is saying. And let me just remind you that this is a breaking news story. We are learning at this point, in the latest that's coming in, that China will be sending its diplomats to Ukraine. But the way things stand as of now on the ground, neither has the fighting stopped, nor have the preparations for a second major flare-up. Now, in case the Chinese diplomats fail to deliver the task that's been assigned to them, the next page of the Ukraine war will be tank versus tank and drone versus drone. You see, the two sides are rolling out the best war weapons from their kitty with the hope of winning this war. But who really is winning is the immediate question that arises. And we'll get to that in just a bit. First, we look at Russia's new war engine in Ukraine. The T-14 Armata battle tank. Now, it looks like most other tanks, but let me tell you here what's special about it. This tank reportedly has the capability of shooting down Ukraine's anti-tank rockets. It has sophisticated sensors, data networking, and not just that, there are drones on board this tank. And it's highly automated, by the way. The tank's crew, for example, does not need to control the arms loaded onto these tanks in person. They sit in an isolated armored capsule, which is located in the front of the tank's hull. On highways, this tank can go at 80 kilometers per hour. It was first unveiled in 2015, and Russia's plan was to produce 2,300 of these tanks by 2020. That deadline was later stretched to 2025. So how many of these tanks does Russia have now? It's hard to say how many of them have been deployed in Ukraine. Again, that's something that Russia has not put a number to. But here's what we can tell you. While these tanks have rolled into Ukraine, they have not yet participated in a direct assault operation. Yet being the word of interest here. What does Ukraine have? The German-made Leopard 2 and American Abrams. And here's how they compare to the Russian T-14 Armata. The Russian tank needs 3 crew. Both Leopard and Abrams need 4. Leopard 2 has a maximum range of 500 kilometers. M1 Abrams, 1,005 kilometers. Russia's T-14 Armata has a maximum range of 500 kilometers. And what about the armament? Leopard 2 is fitted with Rheinmetall 120mm L55 smoothbore gun, coaxial 7.62mm machine gun, and 7.2 mm anti-aircraft machine gun. M1 Abrams has M256 120 mm smoothbore cannon, 12.7 mm machine gun, 7.62mm M240 machine gun. The T-14 Armata, on the other hand, can fire laser-guided missiles. It is also fitted with a 125mm 2A821M smoothbore gun. Secondary weapons can be loaded on top of this. Now the question is, which side has stronger tanks? Is it Ukraine or is it Russia? And the answer is, it does not matter. What does matter in the battle of tanks is the number of tanks, not their features. And let me just give you an example here. The Battle of Kursk, it was the largest tank battle in history. This battle was fought during the Second World War between the Soviet army and the German army. For the German dictator Adolf Hitler, the battle was a chance to assert German strength and improve Nazi Germany's position among its allies. And for the Soviets, the battle was about protecting Kursk. And the Soviets, won the battle. And it wasn't because they were better prepared or had better tanks. The Soviets, you see, won because they had more tanks, around double the number of German tanks. Also, the Soviets had a better supply chain of tanks. Now, this is not something that ex-Soviet state Ukraine can boast about. You see, the Ukrainian military is over-reliant on the West, on Western weapons, so much so that Ukraine cannot go ahead with a fresh round of offensive without these weapons. Reports say Ukraine has lost almost half of the 800 tanks that it had in its inventory since the war started. And Russia, on the other hand, had over 2,000 when it went to war. Sure, we saw many of these tanks break down on the way to Kyiv, but a year on, it will not be wrong to assume that Russia still has the number in its favor. Because the fact remains that the West has not been able to add much to Ukraine's fleet. Just a handful of Western tanks have been delivered till date, which may explain the holdup in Ukraine's offensive. It was supposed to begin in November 2022. The year has changed. It's almost the end of April 2023, and Ukraine is yet to sound the bugle for its counteroffensive. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, meanwhile, has made it clear that his troops will not be able to proceed unless Western weapons arrive. In fact, as I speak, Ukraine is still preparing for the offensive. Reports say Ukraine is expanding its army of drones. There is a fundraising campaign aimed at training drone pilots, equipping them with sophisticated drones. But not all the drones in Ukraine's storehouses are sophisticated. Ukraine is being forced to use smaller drones. You know, the kind used for filming weddings and Instagram reels. Ukraine has reportedly imported thousands of these drones in the last year. Some 3,300 other drones have been built or purchased. Many civilians have sent in their hobby drones for this project. And Ukraine hopes to use them to keep a watch on Russian installations. One of Ukraine's drones was recently found near Moscow, and reports say the drone had crashed. It was a kamikaze drone, similar to the Iranian Shahed kamikaze drones that have been deployed by Russia. So we are back to the question, who is winning this battle of tanks and drones in Ukraine? If you look at the gains vis-a-vis the counter-offensive, and if you look at the state of the battleground, then the answer may not be easy on Ukraine's ear. WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the updates on the move.